Well, hey, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Buttercupp podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about hiring where you want to grow.
We are, but before we do that, we did get a question.
We did.
So this is for Sarah. Her question was, what's the most efficient and cost-effective way for small/micro businesses to promote their products in front of their target market?
We kind of chatted about that. Go ahead and share your thoughts. It was really good.
Well, I think the most efficient way is to get in front of a lot of people. And so we talked about this a little bit in our other episode, that one way that we were able to very quickly make decisions about the products that we offered was by going to our farmers market. And so if you can get into an in-person market, that's going to be the most efficient way. It doesn't mean it's most cost effective, but it's most efficient because there's a lot of people and you can really watch them interact with your product. So I think that's the most efficient. Cost effective, I think, is social media.
Yep.
I mean, you can't beat free.
Yeah, and I think the key thing there when we're talking about social media is we're talking about just consistency. Consistently posting and consistently capturing your processes, what you're teaching, what you're making, what you're selling, and just being consistent with that. So
Yeah, and I think as educational as you can be, I think a lot of people think like, well, I posted a picture and nobody even liked it. They don't really want to interact with that. You need to post something that they're interested in, that tells them how this product is going to work for them in their life and that kind of thing. So I think if you make it really interesting and interactive and educational, you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck on social media.
Very true. So, hey, thanks, Sarah, for that question, and hope that helps. So, hiring where you want to grow. That's our topic for this week. And we kind of wanted to start out talking about our hiring process first, because we do have a process that we put in place. We didn't always have this process. The first person we ever hired, besides my wife and I saying, hey, we're going to work together, was Tristan, is my son-in-law. And we kind of got to this place where we knew we needed help, and I'll touch on that. But one of the things that we take every new hire through is there is a hiring process. So we have a physical interview. We have them turn in a resume, obviously, no matter how old they are or who they are, because it helps to just show their willingness, their energy level. We get to know them from a background a little bit. And then even before the interview, we have them go through the Myers-Briggs personality profile. And that profile is one of my favorites, because what that does is then we kind of cross-reference their personality with the rest of our team. And then what's cool about Myers-Briggs is you can also compare those to other people on your team. So if someone's going to be working in a different area with our current team member, we can kind of see, okay, how well do their personalities click with one another. It's been an invaluable process for us. And then another part that we do is Patrick Lencioni of the Table Group. He's written some amazing books. It's called Working Genius. And Working Genius costs money to take a team member through. It's $25 for each individual, but for us, what the Working Genius does is it helps. So the Myers-Briggs tells me their personality. Working Genius tells me how they work and where their strengths are in their work. So you can team up someone's personality with how they work, and that's been just a valuable process.
It really has. And I think one mistake that we made was initially when we were opening some of our locations and for the farmers market, when we were hiring for a position that seems pretty straightforward in retail, we would be like, oh, it's fine. They have a great personality. It'll be fine. And that was a big mistake that we made.
Yeah.
And so now we even take our retail hires through at least the Myers-Briggs, because they're not working in production with us where it's like the whole team coming together. We don't always take them through the Working Genius part of it, but we do for the Myers-Briggs. That was a huge mistake that we made.
Because someone can have an outgoing personality, but still be introverted to the point to where they don't like retail. So it's taking that time to really discover who somebody is. And just because you never hire to just fill a hole. You want to think long term with that. And so I want to get into how we got to this point with Tristan. So when we were starting our company, first it was you in production, then I stepped in with production, then you took over more customer service. I stepped in with, obviously did the website development and also production, manufacturing. We were jumping in together, shipping. And then we got to this point to where Tristan kind of presented this opportunity that was exactly when we needed it. But what was interesting is it was one of those questions that we had is, can we afford it financially? Because he was the first hire early on. But that's not always the best question for us to ask, was it?
No, not at all. Because I think initially when you're feeling really overwhelmed and everything just feels hard, I just need help. But you don't really know where you need help. And so we were feeling like we were just working around the clock. We had really late nights, long days. The hardest thing was we'd go to, the farmer's market over the weekend. They'd completely clean us out. And then you have to come and completely reset your store. Plus you have online orders. So it felt like we knew we needed help, but where did we really need help? And I think when he first came to us, it was like, well, there's no extra money for that. Like we're producing this much, we're selling this much, we're having predictable weeks, but where does he fit into that? But when you bring on that person, all of a sudden your capacity for more increases, and then you're able to make more money
and hire where you want to
grow. Exactly.
So that's so key with hiring. And we've made some key hires with team members that are like, okay, we are projecting that this hire is going to help us get to this next goal, this next place that we want to get to. So sometimes you have to hire where you want to get to. And sometimes that means like micro hires where you're delegating something to someone like Brady that works for us full time, who's my nephew, videographer extraordinaire, and my niece Grace. They're behind the cameras here. With them, like we were already outsourcing things to Brady before we ever brought him on, and just paying him kind of gig work for his company.
Right.
But the goal was to get there. So just like we talked about, you beta test something. There's ways you can do that with hiring too, where you start small and you say, okay, I'm gonna use an outsource. That is hiring. Even though they're not technically on payroll, so to speak, where you do these micro hires, and sometimes that's finding online services where someone can edit a video or whatever it is. There's micro hires that you can make that lets you kind of test the waters and say, okay, did this add value, get us to where we want to get to?
Sometimes I think you have to get a little bit creative with those hires. Like one thing that a lot of, I don't know who they are, business gurus give the advice to hire someone to clean your house, because if you don't have to, clean your house, then you have extra time for this. And I get where they're coming from, but for me personally, that was never very helpful. Even though I don't like cleaning my house, I didn't feel like that was very useful advice. What I feel like, like when I had my photography studio, one thing that I did was, who's a mom that maybe doesn't want a full-time job, but she likes me, she likes my business. Maybe I can trade photos with her and she finds value in that. And then she'll come in and she'll help me weed through all these emails that I get, or she'll come in and she'll help me write newsletters, something that I'm not good at.
Bartering.
Yeah. So like that's something that you may find someone to do.
We haven't really done that with this business, but
no,
we've
but
done that in the
but that
past.
has worked for me in the past, is to trade. And then once I realized like, okay, that was immensely helpful by bringing her in to help me write newsletters and answer emails. Holy cow, that freed me up. I was able to take on X number of sessions because that gave me that time. So I think that's one way, but I did do a lot of trading when I had my studio. But another thing too is you might find someone that wants to only come in for 1 day a week. Like that might be something that you're not interested in or able to do, but I mean, you just don't know. But the other thing too, with our hires that we've been really careful with is to really maximize everyone that's working with us.
Yeah.
And so, if you look at positions, like we should have a production team and a retail team, but really what's happening is they're all floating here and there.
And that's that whole concept that I was sharing before we started the podcast, is this law of the bench. And here's what I mean by that. Like my son, Carter, he manages our Bettendorf location that we're sitting at right now, and he works Thursday through Sunday. And he just started coming in on Mondays in production and the back of our Moline store to learn the ropes, to learn from Grace, learn from Tristan. And it's not because he's going to be there every single day. It's just giving our team depth. Like perfect example, last week at the time that we're recording this today, Tristan was out. He was sick all week. But because everybody was cross-trained, it was easy to step in, take care of things that needed to be done, and keep the ball kind of moving down the field. So I'm a huge proponent of cross-training, and a huge proponent also of not getting stuck too much to titles and really having people know like their tasks, that because then it just gives us flexibility and freedom, especially when you're small. You can really like, well, that's not my job. When then you end up creating silos in your company that you really don't ever want, rather than a team atmosphere that says, again, cheesy acronyms, but together everyone accomplishes more. That's the whole acronym of team, of really working together. So training a bench and having a bench is huge. So just like I was sharing on our last podcast is, when you're hiring where you want to grow, sometimes you have to, as the owner of the company, you have to sacrifice, and you have to say, okay, we're willing to take a pay cut, which is what Jennifer and I did in order to make room for more of our team members. So us at 20% of our sales, we backed that off to 15 and ran our own personal budget and said, hey, that works. And then that freed up resources to be able to pour in to hiring where we want to grow, which made space for us to pass that 5% difference onto our team, and then also bring Brady on to be able to do what we're doing right now.
Right. Yeah. And so I think sometimes people, when they look at it on paper, it maybe doesn't really make sense.
Scary sometimes.
It's really scary to make that leap. And I think it's scary too to think about taking a pay cut. But again, let's go back to, how we recommend that you do, which is the profit first method. And when you do that, everything is laid out very clearly how you're going to get paid and what percentages. So there's never this, we're never wondering, like when we go to a show, oh my gosh, out of this show this weekend, we have to make this much money because I have to pay. I mean, yes, you're thinking about it. Yeah, it's the reality.
You have goals and
you
projections,
do, but at the same time, we know that these percentages, this is how we're getting paid, and our paycheck does fluctuate, obviously based on the season that we're in, and we cap it, but there's also weeks where we're way under because we're in a slow season. So it is a little scary when you look at it on paper, but by bringing those people on, how many more things are you able to do, and how can you increase that revenue? How will that person add value to your team?
Yeah, and I think a big part of hiring is when you hire where you want to grow, you have to have a really clear vision for what that is. You kind of have to lay out like we're having talks right now of, okay, what when that time comes, and we're not there yet from a manufacturing production standpoint, okay, what is the greatest need that's not just going to take tasks off of somebody's plate, but what's the hire that's going to add the most value across the entire team? Like one of the awesome things about Grace is Grace handles our social media. She's fantastic with our social media, has an eye eye for it, but also she's in our production, doing shipping, labeling, and so she's kind of doing multiple things. Plus, she works in the front of the store. Like she wears like a lot of different hats.
Well, and the funny thing is she's doing what I used to do.
Right.
You know
yeah.
what I mean? So it's like as you grow, and it leaves us open to, like right now, the most time consuming task that you and I are doing is looking for a new building because we've outgrown Moline. Like that sounds like you would just, get a realtor and blah, blah, blah. But it really means going to meetings with the city, going to look at all of these places, talking to banks, it is so time consuming. And so having, Gray step in and fill, the shoes that I was
huge.
doing. Yeah.
It's so huge. And having that bigger picture of going, okay, to get to where we want to get to, we have to delegate roles and responsibilities. But also, one of the things we talk about with our team is where do they want to go, and that's a big conversation. Like Kara that worked for us, we love Kara. Hi, Kara. Hope you're watching this. So. But like Kara, when Kara came on, she was at our bank and kept going through the drive-through, talking with Kara. And I said to my wife, I said, we need to hire Kara. Yeah, I said, Kara has a great personality. I said, I think she'll fit in really well. But we didn't just hire Kara. We started talking about it. We walked her through the processes, looked at her personality. She has the same personality as me, by the way, INFJ on the Myers-Briggs. And also working genius, and really plugged her in. She fit like an old pair of shoes, just like perfect. And great for the season that she was at our company. But then one of the things we always wanted to encourage our company or our team members is, what's your dreams? And Kara was dreaming about where she wanted to go. And we have some dreams that I know Grace is dreaming about, and things that Brady's dreaming about, and Tristan and Carter. So part of hiring is you're not just hiring someone to just
punch in.
Yeah, to punch in and menial tasks. That's not the culture that you want to have. So a big piece of hiring, why I'm rambling with all this, is culture. That you have to know that you hire the culture you want. Okay, so that means your process for hiring has to be slow. You're not just wanting someone to put stickers on a candle. That's not why we brought Grace on, or Brady, or Tristan, or whoever. But you're hiring your culture that you want, and then you build that culture. It was one of the greatest compliments that we had was how well our team interacts and makes us real quick decisions collaboratively.
We're problem solvers.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, but problem solvers as a team, and it's all of us collectively together making those. And that was feedback we got from somebody outside our organization. And so part of hiring is you're hiring that culture. So
right.
For sure.
The other thing I did want to touch on too really quick is I think another big hurdle that businesses have, especially a handmade one, is they don't want to give their secrets away. And so
that's huge.
It's really big. And so how are you okay with having someone, do you do a non-compete and things like that? We do not do that. When we brought Tristan in, the first thing he did was work side by side with you, and he's watching you and he's learning. And we saw that he was competent and capable, and we gave him our recipe. Yep. So the truth is he could leave tomorrow and go start his own candle company that would rival ours. Now, the reason that we're not concerned about that, and the reason we don't have anyone sign a non-compete, is because no matter how many recipes he takes of ours, he will never be us. Yep. And so if he were to go start his own candle company tomorrow, he would have his own ideas for labeling and packaging, and he would have his own personality on social media. And there's people that are going to like, know, and trust Tristan, and there's going to be people that like, know, and trust us. And so we don't worry about our recipes. Like the recipe, you have to have a quality product, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to stop somebody from taking that.
Yeah, we're definitely more concerned with adding value to the team members that we bring on. And that's where it really comes down to, you're wanting to duplicate yourself in a way that maximizes the entire team. So if you're just hiring to fill a void, And obviously that void is there. You do need to fill the void, but it's thinking bigger picture before you get down to the nitty gritty day-to-day tactical things. So if you're a maker and you are knitting, let's say, okay, and you're knitting whatever people knit, hats. You're knitting baby hats, and you have this demand for your baby hats, and you're knitting, and then you go to a show, you get cleaned out, and then you have to all of a sudden knit all these hats again. So the question is, who do you know that also can knit, that you can teach, the way you do things? This is where it gets really scary, because now you're having to duplicate yourself, but also you can maximize your output. And that's what we found with Tristan. We brought him in. He caught on super fast, took ownership really quickly, and then ran with, but we worked together. And so when it comes to a process, one of the things I like to do is you model something. So say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Can you come alongside me and watch this? Then you're going to model it and delegate, so that someone's doing that task right along with you. Then you delegate it and oversee it to where you're watching to make sure the production, and then eventually it's full-on delegation where they run with it. That's where we're at with Tristan. Tristan just runs with it, but that's a good process when it comes to hiring someone, to where you can start small and see if it works. Like I think of Willie Bands, like her company's.
Yeah, she does that. Yep. She has people that sew for her. But I was going to say too, back to the knit hats. If you want to look up a really cool company, there's someone called Be Happy, and she spells it HAPPE. She is like one of my favorite people to follow on social media, because she does knit hats. That's what she does. Oh. They were from Iowa, I think, originally, and now they live in an RV, and they travel the country with their family. And so she actually sells mobile. But her business grew so much that she actually hired other knitters. And so then she has this whole thing where they ship things to her, okay, I'm going to be here for 3 weeks, so I'm going to get my shipments here. And then she's sending out hats. It's the coolest thing. So, I mean, if she can make it work on the road, you can totally make that work to outsource and still have things be handmade.
Yeah. And with kind of talking about outsourcing, there's some really good companies that you can look to. Let's say you're just not there financially to be able to hire. I would challenge that to look at your own personal budget, know your numbers. Like we talked about that before. Know your numbers, know what you can afford and not afford, and then what that risk is. But there's companies like Fiverr. If you go to Fiverr.com, there's tons of different things that you can outsource on Fiverr. There's just a lot of, whatever you're wanting to outsource, if you just Google outsource XYZ, whatever it is, that's a way to start testing and maximize yourself before you actually bring somebody on. But another big thing of when you physically hire someone, have a good accountant is the other thing, because then all of a sudden when you hire someone, you're dealing with payroll taxes, you're dealing with just FICA, Social Security, W-2s, and shifts, and turning in payroll like I did this morning. Just those things that are really having your brain wrapped around to make sure that that's something that you can actually
right. And that's why I liked with my studio bartering, because you get some moms that are like, I don't really want a full-time job, but I would sure love to come in here and organize your props for you once a week, which was immensely helpful to me. So.
Yeah. So when it came to hiring new people, what all of a sudden happens is you have to communicate more. And then, so in that hiring process, you have to make sure that you have really great channels of communication to be able to communicate. So internally, even early on, one of the first things we set up in our company is we use Workplace by Meta. And so Meta, formerly Facebook, Workplace by Meta, it's a great communication tool. It's like Facebook for your company. But that was our internal that is our internal communication, how we chat with each other. We have different groups set up. But as you hire, that's more baton passes. And that's the way I think of communication is, if my phone here is a baton, you're running a relay race, it's like, what is the next physical thing that I need to say or do or get to this person that's going to help them grab a hold of that to continue that race around the track to the finish line. So that finish line, the starting line might be needing X number bolts of yarn, or I don't even know what's bolts or whatever. Yeah, X number amount of yarn.
Skein.
Yeah.
I think.
to get to an output of 100 baby hats. Okay, so you have the 100 baby hats. Well, you have to, if you have a team now, you have to communicate that of who's getting the raw materials, who's ordering that, what's the ship dates that they come in. Production, perfect example. Recording today, Grace and Brady went on ahead to get everything set up, which worked out fantastic. So we showed up here, we were able to sit down, record, but that's all communication. Those are tie-ins.
Right.
So.
And when you bring somebody on, it makes you more efficient because it really makes you evaluate how you're spending your time. And one thing that we found too is when you bring in another person, they may have some really great ideas. And I love being in production, but I'm also very slow about it. I don't go about it the most efficient way. And so when we brought Tristan in, so like last week when he was sick, it drove him crazy because he was like, "Did you use my spreadsheets?" Absolutely not. Yeah. He's like, "What do you mean you didn't use my spreadsheets? I had everything set up." And I was like, "No, that's not the way I like to work. He's like, "Well, how did you know what to do?" I said, "The old fashioned way. I used pen and paper and I figured it out." It drove him crazy that he's got all of these great systems in place. And I was like, I'll just do it my slow old way. But, when you bring somebody in, it makes you more efficient because you do have to lay out your process. And then they're like, "Well, why do you do step 3 and 4? Could we combine those and do it like this?" And it's like, "Oh, I never thought to do that,"
Yeah, that's one of the great things with teams is when you're hiring new people is one of the things we talk about all the time around here is it's right answers over being right. So when you bring in somebody new, they're going to have a fresh set of eyes. They're going to be looking at your entire company in a different way. And I just said this to Brady, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. I was just like, "Hey, what do you think? Pick it apart. You're not going to hurt my feelings." So we try to hold on to ideas very loosely, but when it's your baby and you start something, to have somebody point something out, it's almost like a person. It's a very personal thing, but being able to say right answers over being right, which means we collectively bring our team together to help us make decisions. And one of the great things going back to Working Genius is it ranks different people's work ability, and so like Tristan, who is in production, one of the key pieces of his Working Genius is wonder. And one of those features of wonder is the ability to dream and look at where things are going. So even though Tristan is manufacturing in candles, one of my strengths is also wonder. So it's bringing him in and say, "Tristan, I have this idea. What do you think of this idea?" Or like the day he was walking from the front of our store in Moline to the back of the store, or back to manufacturing, and we had these dog planters or puppy planters that you could put plants in, obviously. And he looked at that and he goes, "We should put candles in there." Well, they weren't selling before that. He made them into candles, tested them, and we sold them. So it's those little things of just sometimes when you get somebody so stuck in a job description that you end up almost hindering their growth, or you end up hindering the growth of your company, because when you have this culture of right answers over being right, when someone challenges your idea or process or system, you can't take it personally. You just got to go, "Hey, that's a great idea. We need to shift. We need to pivot with this. We need to get better and improve." So, but a lot of that has to do with communication. It has to do with being vulnerable. Allowing yourself to be transparent, not build silos to where, unfortunately, a lot of companies where you have, people peeing in corners, so to speak, protecting their territory, instead of, "Hey, we're all in this together. How do we move this dream forward?"
Yeah, and I would say we're building quite the little dream team.
Yeah, totally. And, it's collectively of saying we have a lot of things that we want to do, a lot of things that we want to accomplish that are going to take more people. And we're in the process right now of looking at our market season, looking at what's coming, saying, who do we need to hire? We're going to have to make some hires coming up here for retail, but also what's always in the back of my mind, and I'd say even the front of my mind in my notes of like, "Hey, this is so-and-so on our team. This is their dream. how can we start taking those baby steps to move that direction? And that excites me even more than the other stuff we're doing some days. So hire where you want to grow.
Yeah.
So, hey, thanks for watching this week's podcast. We'd love for you to leave us some more comments. If you have some questions you want to ask us, you can ask us a question here on our YouTube channel, also on Facebook or Instagram, and make sure you like and subscribe.